The Brothers of the Field. A tale of Cain and Abel in the verdant cradle of Eden, where the rivers flowed with life, and the land was rich with promise. There lived two brothers born to Adam and Eve. Their names were Cain and Abel, each as different from the other as night from day. Cain, the elder, was a tiller of the soil. His hands were broad, muscles forged from the tireless work of breaking and nurturing the earth. He loved the feel of the damp soil between his fingers, the scent of the freshly plowed fields, and the satisfaction of watching his crops grow under his watchful eye. His fields were his pride, his creation, his very essence. Abel, on the other hand, was a keeper of sheep. His heart was as gentle as the bleating of his lambs. He found joy in the tranquility of the pastures, the soft patter of hooves, and the endless blue sky above. His life was simpler, perhaps, less tied to the land, but deeply connected to the cycles of life and death that his flock represented. Their lives, though simple, were not without their trials. As the first sons of humanity, they bore the weight of expectation, the divine duty to offer thanks and honor to the Creator for the bounty they reaped. One year, as the time for offering drew near, both brothers prepared their gifts. Cain, with a heart full of pride, selected the most succulent fruits, the ripest grains, and laid them before the altar. Abel, with his tender spirit, chose the best from his flock, a lamb without blemish, and its life was given in sacrifice. The offering was a ritual, a moment of connection between the Creator and his creation. Yet when the divine fire came down, it consumed Abel's offering with a vigor that left Cain's untouched, lying cold on the altar. Cain's heart, already heavy with the toil of the earth, now grew bitter with envy. Why was his brother's offering favored? Was he not the firstborn? Did he not work the land with his own sweat and blood? The whisper of jealousy began to fester in his mind, growing like a weed in the fertile soil of his heart. One day, as the sun climbed high, casting long shadows over the fields, Cain invited Abel to walk with him to the fields. Abel, unsuspecting of his brother's dark thoughts, agreed with a smile, eager to discuss the weather and perhaps trade stories of their respective labors. As they walked, Cain's mind was a storm. He tried to speak, to ask why Abel's gift was preferred, but words turned to thorns in his throat. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with unspoken accusations and the rustle of the wind through the crops. They reached the far end of the field where no one could hear or see. Here, where Cain's sweat had turned the earth rich, where he had given so much of himself, he felt the sting of injustice most keenly. In a moment of clouded judgment, driven by a tempest of emotions, he struck Abel with a rock from the very field he had tended with love. Abel fell, his lifeblood soaking into the soil, his last breath a whisper lost to the wind. Cain stood over his brother, realization dawning like the first light after night. What had he done? The earth, his beloved earth, now seemed to recoil from him. The ground that drank Abel's blood cried out to the heavens, and the Creator heard. Cain, marked by his sin, was cast out, a wanderer upon the earth, his offerings forever tainted by this act of fratricide. As Cain wandered, the story of his deeds spread, becoming a cautionary tale whispered through generations. Yet in the shadows of this dark narrative, there was a lesson, a profound truth about the nature of offerings, not just to the divine, but to each other. Cain's crops thrived, but they were born of his own desires, his own pride. Abel's offering, though simple, was given with a pure heart, acknowledging the cycle of life, the necessity of sacrifice, and the humility of existence. The divine favor wasn't for the act itself, but for the spirit with which it was given. The tale of Cain and Abel thus became more than a story of jealousy and murder. It became a parable about the heart from which our actions spring. That fertile field, once a place of life, now a symbol of moral choice, where the seeds of brotherly love could have grown just as well as the weeds of resentment. And so, even in the shadow of tragedy, the human story continued, learning, growing, and forever searching for the right path in the field of life.